Yeah!
Ah!
Hello, interwebs.
Hi, internet webs.
Yes, the webby interwebs, internets, things. I need to go. I forgot to open up my questions. Drive.google.com. Yes, so Harry Potter. Oh, hey, you could introduce yourself because you haven't been on here before. Uh,
Hi, I'm Catherine. She, her pronouns, please. Um, what else do I say?
um, I think that's pretty much good. I mean, we said a lot more in the first live stream, but that was because that was the entire live stream.
Okay.
But if you have anything else that you feel is relevant about like your background that you want to share, go for it.
My master's degree is in school counseling, and I have some mental health issues of my own. So, like, I view the stories very much through that lens. And I identify as a feminist, or else I guess I wouldn't really be doing this reread. So it'd be an odd choice for someone who doesn't identify as a feminist.
I identify as a feminist ally because I am not female, and so I feel like, yeah.
I
I have
feel
a
like
longer blog post about it on my
mhm,
own thing that's on my Tumblr. This was a recent decision of mine based
that's
on.
an interesting choice because I never thought of feminist as having to be female or as a binary gender.
Well, part of it has to do with men calling themselves feminist and using that as a way to gain trust in order to manipulate,
Mm.
not actually being feminists. Yeah, and using jargon and being able to talk all the feminist talk, but not
Mhm.
actually walking the walk. And so I have just kind of decided that I want to explicitly say that I'm an ally, and I shouldn't be. I don't want to assume that I um, have a right to be in feminist spaces,
Mhm.
and that's something that's given to me by women, like being allowed in feminist spaces, not like, yeah,
Right.
it's
No,
not
I
something
really I
I
like
claim.
that idea. That makes sense.
Yeah, and especially because in the context of like feminism, there's not really like a, it's not like the LGBTQ community where allies are like, I'm an ally, I'm so great, and I get to be in all your space. It's different. It's not like there's. If that was how feminist allies were, I would be like, okay, I'm not.
I'm not one. If that's what it is, that's not me.
um, I think the creepy feminist men are more equivalent to the that. And there are plenty of LGBTQ allies who are great and don't act like they have a right to all LGBTQ spaces or complain about the lack of straight pride or whatever. I don't understand. But
I was joking with my mother about that earlier today, actually, because I was telling her about this reread and how part of it was like how it had to do with feminist and social justice issues, and how like LGBTQIA was like one lens that you could look at the series for. And I said, well, Mom, she was like, what do all those letters stand for? And I told her 'cause she didn't know. And I was like, but Mom, I'm really insulted because really they should add an H for me. And she was like, huh? And I was like, I'm kidding. Heterosexuals do not need to be included in this. Like, there's no, just no. But it confused my mom, and it was really funny.
yeah. Anyway, Harry Potter. Yeah, let's talk about Harry Potter. Let's
All
talk
right.
about Chapter 10, Halloween, of Philosopher's slash Sorcerer's Stone. I don't know if you saw the questions I added.
I have them printed out right here.
The ones I added already? Wow,
Yep.
on it. I have a lot. You have a lot. Looks like I have. I was really confused because nobody's ever added any questions into the document. And
Mhm.
so I looked at it and I was like, I thought I hadn't done anything. And then I looked and I'm like, I didn't write this.
Well, it said on Facebook that we were allowed to, so I figured it was
Yeah,
okay.
no, I've always encouraged people to contribute. Although it just confused me because I got used to it just being a thing that I was using as my own like reference of like, oh, I wrote these things, so later on if I use any of these ideas, they were mine originally, and I'm not just like, yeah. But now I have to think about things. It's okay.
Feel free to use it in a later context.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's on video. It's recorded. I have it forever.
You have it forever.
I have the permission. Yeah. So I don't know if there was anything that you from this chapter you like run to like start with. If there was one, I like to let other people lead if they have something they're super interested in.
I think if I do that, I'll get confused because then they won't be in order.
You want to go in order? Okay, we can go in order.
If that's okay.
Okay. Then I'm sorry that I put all mine first.
No, it's okay.
Easier for me to think that way.
Totally okay.
Because then I would have been looking at yours and kept thinking about your questions. So my first question was just why aren't first years allowed brooms? And actually that fits in well with the next chapter questions too. But just sort of an interesting question, like why? I just wanted to know why.
It's really interesting to me that first years aren't allowed brooms, but they can be they can't be on Quidditch teams, but they're allowed to be near the Whomping Willow, which is quite dangerous. And there's a giant squid, and there are all these other dangerous
giant squid's ever done anything? Does anyone has it?
Probably not, but that seems scarier to me than a broomstick.
I think in some ways, I think of the brooms as similar to cars, and I wonder why there's not like a license required for a broomstick.
Yeah.
It's quite dangerous, potentially, falling off, That's, as Harry proves multiple times throughout the series, broomsticks can be dangerous. Yeah. So it's weird that they don't allow first years. Except that I imagine it's because they have flying lessons for first years, and so they're not supposed to have their own broom until they've passed their flying lessons.
That makes sense.
I think they only have one flying lesson in the course of this book.
Yes, they only have one.
I mean, I guess there are probably others, but Harry probably doesn't care because Harry is Mr. Jock, perfect at flying. Yeah. So... It
also, to me, harkens to, I don't use that word usually. I don't know why I just said that. It's similar to, in college, at a lot of colleges, freshmen are not allowed to have their cars there. But in that case, it's usually because they don't have, parking space for them. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, but, one of the things I noticed in these chapters is that, I think it was in these chapters. Yeah, Harry goes to the broom shed, I think, at some point to put his broom away. Mm-hmm. But throughout the rest of the series, we see that he has his broom in his bedroom, and no other first years are allowed to have brooms anyways. So that line of logic wouldn't make sense of it being a space thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's space. And they have school brooms, and the brooms don't take up that much space compared to a car, so...
It's true.
Yeah, I just think it's... I don't know. It also might just be a privilege thing, not even a safety thing. But I don't know. It was just an interesting thing to think about. Yeah. I think I left out most of my... That was just an interesting thing to think about questions. But there's still some in there.
I have those in my Word document. I have just quotes with questions next to them, and some of them are just seriously, and some of them are just poor Neville. There are a lot of poor Nevilles.
Poor Neville, indeed. Anyway, the next thing on there was really that I kept thinking about a lot was that McGonagall sends Harry the broom, and so it made me wonder whether this is something she bought or if maybe there's some sort of club money, and either way why does Harry get this like fancy new broom, the fastest, best model, and all his teammates are on like, well, maybe not all of them. At least the Weasleys are on old, slow, not so great brooms, and um, yeah, it was just it was because I was looking at it from two different perspectives of like, on one hand, this is like famous Harry Potter gets everything all the time and whatever, and then I also started thinking about last week I think we were talking about how Hagrid seems to be the only adult who's really paying attention to Harry and really doing anything to care about Harry beyond just like, yes, Harry, go to class or whatever. And that maybe this was McGonagall's way of looking out, because McGonagall, of all of his teachers, is probably the only one who would know that the Dursleys are awful. Like she thought that 10 years ago, and I wonder sometimes whether she still thinks that, is still aware of that, remembers that, and if maybe she bought Harry some really nice broom and was excited to get him on the team because she was thinking about getting this kid involved and happy at school and giving him a place.
I like that take on it especially, and I really think she probably did. Well, I think she probably did spend her own money on it, because eventually, at some point, Draco's father like buys the whole Slytherin team.
Even newer, better.
Yeah, and so I think the brooms do come from like private funding, so to say,
Yeah.
and I just imagine like if Draco Malfoy doesn't even have this broom yet, like it's that nice and that new, like how many months probably of salary was Minerva McGonagall spending on Harry?
Yeah.
Without him even really ever acknowledging it, or like, does he ever even thank her?
I don't know. Hi, Auden. You have joined us. It's good to see your face again. I have missed your face.
I have missed your face. It's such a nice face.
We were just talking about McGonagall getting the broom for Harry. We've just started digging into the 10th chapter. I don't know if you've had a chance to glance over the questions that are in the docs.
I have not. I will go look at those now.
Okay, so if you haven't, then you wouldn't know, but that's where we are.
Okay.
We're going in order because that seems to be the way that feels best, so we will go in order.
Because it'll drive me a little, it'll just do funny things to me if I don't do them in order.
Which is perfectly fine. Yeah, so, yeah, we were just talking about McGonagall and because this is a brand new fancy broom that she just bought for Harry, and kind of just questioning why she did that. And I think right now we're both kind of in agreement that it was something she did for Harry specifically, like aware of his struggles, perhaps, is the word. His situation.
And like up to this point, he's never had a real present in his life.
Yeah, that's the thing I was thinking of. Is like, did she know that he had never gotten any sort of present at all?
And as much as they knew about him, like they knew when he moved from the cupboard under the stairs to the smallest room, to the hotel, to the shack on the rock, like I feel like they probably knew what was going on at his house.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I looked at it earlier in the books, like the font, and I think it's the same font as Hagrid's writing, so Hagrid knew. I don't know how much McGonagall might have known, but she's deputy headmistress, so... But then I don't know that Dumbledore shares anything with her, because he's Dumbledore and he knows everything, and just listen to what he says, okay, woman?
That's true.
Oh, Dumbledore. Hi again, Auden.
Hi. Yeah, I have to switch between emails a bunch, and it makes everything very confusing.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, a bunch of stuff from my Google Drive is in one email account, and then the prompts, the discussion prompts, are in a different account, and
You could share
it's
them
just a
with the other.
mess.
Or you could just...
Yeah, but like it just
It's okay. I understand.
so I've returned. Yeah,
You
I'm
returned.
back.
Great. Did you have anything you wanted to add on that subject of
I mean, I
growth?
missed a lot of it because I was gone.
That's
'Cause
okay.
I disappeared just then.
Um, that's fine. Catherine, did you have anything else you wanted to add on that, or move on?
No, I really like this next question that you posed.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Really like the next
I'm going to
question.
read it for Auden. How does class affect Ron's feeling about the broom and how he, quote, couldn't resist bragging to Malfoy about the specific model? Like, what does this interaction between Ron and Malfoy teach us about class and classism in the wizarding world and in our world? So that's a big subject
Yeah.
to dive into, because when I read this, I just was like, Ron, class, this is what's going on here. Malfoy's calling him poor.
Again.
Still.
I mean, I think that's especially interesting because, like, it isn't Ron's broom. Like, this isn't his thing that suddenly he has acquired money to buy. It's Harry's thing, and all the way through the books.
Buy it. It's. Like,
I mean, yeah, but
his friend got a gift. His friend got a fancy gift, and Ron's like, "Look, I have this nice status symbol, Malfoy."
yeah, I don't even have it. My friend has this thing. But I mean, I think it's interesting how all the way through the books, Ron kind of uses Harry to, in that way, like, to be like, look, it's Harry Potter. I am associated with Harry Potter, therefore. And I think that's kind of another example of that, so.
Yeah. It also has to do with Ron's, like, inferiority complex he's got going on just within his family. But I think there's also a lot going on with class, and like if you look at the interaction between Mr. Malfoy and Mr. Weasley, they have very similar interactions where it's like, you're poor. Mr. Weasley's like, yeah, well, my family's nice. But Ron is really insistent on this, like, I have this now, this status symbol. I've now, like, joined the ranks of wealthy, and it's like it's really important to him to appear wealthy.
Well, and Harry, in that regard, is sort of the ultimate status symbol.
Yeah.
So I feel like Ron lives, definitely like Auden was saying, lives sort of vicariously through Harry and Harry's purchases and the nice things that Harry gets. And I think Harry like doesn't necessarily encourage that, but he allows it, and he lets Ron play with his nice toys.
Yeah. Yeah, he always does, because he gets this broomstick, the next broomstick he gets, he's like, yeah, let's both go out, and like, I mean, but I think that's kind of typical though for kids, where they're like, I got this cool thing I want to share with my friend, like we're gonna both go do it. You get a new video game, and you're like, come over and play with it, play.
Yeah.
Check out the new thing I got, but yeah. But it's just really interesting how like you're poor is the insult. And Ron's way of responding isn't like, no, it's okay to be poor. His way of responding is, no, look, I'm not anymore.
Really, his way of
look,
responding
my
is being
friend
like,
got this
yeah, my
gift.
best friend's not. Yeah. My best friend's not poor.
Yeah.
I think it's also really interesting the way that, like, Harry, Ron, and Draco both... I mean, like, Harry and Draco are both wealthy, but, like, Harry, in interactions with Ron, is very much like, I gotta keep this, like, it's not even so much like, oh, I want to buy things for you, I want to do this. It's like, I have to keep that out of sight. I don't want them to know. And I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic, too, that I've seen play out a lot in real life. Where, like, Harry is just as embarrassed by that as Ron is. And is very much embarrassed by like all of the help that the Weasleys give him and everything that the Weasley family does for him when he has so much gold. But like they have all of these things that he doesn't have and that he really needs. And so I think that's kind of an interesting dynamic.
Yeah.
And this sort of like plays to the grass is always greener on the other side, because like Autumn was saying, the Weasleys have all these things that Harry really needs, and for me, like the one that comes to mind is like love and a sense of belonging and family.
Yeah.
And so Harry loves the Weasleys, and the Weasleys love him, and they're each getting something out of the interaction, but I don't think they necessarily realize like that the other person doesn't necessarily have it better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Is my background noise audible?
Very lowly.
Okay. I'd put in headphones.
I can hear it, but it isn't a big deal.
It's not distracting.
Okay. Yeah. So that was that thing that we just talked about. And then I had some film comparisons. Because the films and ruining everything. They just ruin everything. So in the films, in the scene with when Harry's with Wood and he's gonna his first Quidditch practice with just Wood. In the films, when Harry hits the bludger, Wood comments on how he's gonna make a fine beater, and in the books, instead, Harry's just like, oh, that was scary, and Wood's like, it's okay, we have great beaters. Like, it's a completely different response. Where in one, yes, magical Harry is perfect at everything, and one's like, yeah, no, don't worry, somebody else will cover that job for you.
Yeah.
And it's, so one of the things I asked is, like, why was this changed? And like just kind of like how is contributing to this like naturally good at everything trope that happens a lot for heroes. And like I think this is one of those instances, like in the movies where so many of Ron's good traits are given to Hermione. This is an instance of like one of the Weasley twins' good traits is just like given to Harry for like no reason.
Mm-hmm.
It's like flattening out multiple characters at once.
I think here what immediately comes to mind is kind of the way that we expect people to be good at many things instead of having like specific skills. Like Harry is a very good seeker, but that's like a very specific skill. And in the books that's made very clear that like he's good at this thing. But we have a tendency to try and like apply those skills out, like to assume that those skills should apply out, and that like if you're good at school, you should be good at other things, and like you should be good at all facets of school instead of one specific element that you really care about and focus on. And I think that also it really takes away from the element of like collaboration and working together that makes Harry and lots of people very powerful. That it's not just like Harry is good at all things, which kind of is what is shown in the movie, but that like Harry is good at some things, but one of his best skills is bringing people together who are good at the things that he's not good at.
Yeah.
He can be like, hey, I'm not really good at this, but I have this friend who can do this, and I know that this person can do this. And that's like a really key skill to have, and a really like that is something that in my experience is like much more valuable than being able to do everything, but like being able to determine what your resources are and like making sure that you use them effectively. So just like I think movie culture in general kind of takes that away. I remember when I was a little kid, I would like play games where I was like a character in the Lord of the Rings because that's what I was super passionate about as a little kid. and I would be like, let's hold a competition in, and I will win at archery and at sword fighting, and I will also win at fighting with an axe, and I will win at this, and I will also win at that. And like my friends would be like, can't you win at some things and not win at other things? And I was like, nope. Because I felt like in order to be successful, I had to win at all of the things instead of like being good at one of them or at a couple and like focusing my energy towards that. So
yeah, that's an interesting thing to look at in a it's like to take that idea beyond just like what the movies like happens in movies and to think about how that affects us as media consumers and the way we build expectations for ourselves and for others, where we think that we have to be good at everything, and if we're not good at everything, we're just like, we're not the hero, we're not good enough, we can't. Yeah, because you shouldn't have to be good at all of those things to be considered good. If the hero is good at everything, then you have to be good at everything to be the hero, and that's like it's a very harmful narrative. Because nobody's good at everything.
I also feel like we lose a lot of Fred and George's character building, like through as the movies progress. Like, of course, there's some of their stuff in there, but a lot of it gets left out. And so this is like another instance of their characters being sort of flattened, and like something positive and good and skillful being taken away from them and giving to Harry. So I feel like that says a lot about the privilege that Harry has in the movie series.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way that Fred and George are kind of like they're taken down into just this single trope of like very funny in the movies instead of being like very complicated characters with a lot of depth to them in the books, and the way that happens to a lot of characters. They become, very very single role. And that's a common thing that we see with, I think, like, talking about Harry as someone with privilege there, and that he has so many other definitions to him than just, like, he is good at this, he is good at that. I think that is especially interesting because, like, looking at that in the context of privilege and of the characters as those characters become defined by a single word, and like the privileged character of Harry Potter doesn't have that single word definition based on a skill or a lack of skill.
He gets to be multidimensional.
His one dimension is good. And the other example I mentioned in the notes was just Seamus. Seamus's character also gets this that happens to him because in the movies, the first movie, all we see of Seamus is him blowing things up. And I noticed this while reading this chapter that Seamus is trying to do Wingardium Leviosa, and he gets impatient, so he starts prodding it and sets it on fire. Not like he just is incompetent. He's just like, okay, this is I'm.
He just gets very frustrated. Yeah,
which is a totally different way of developing his character than just like, oh, Seamus blows things up because Seamus can't even. We are already at 7:30 my time, so I'm gonna try to like speed up through this chapter. There's a lot less in the next chapter though, so you don't need to.
Plus, I showed up this time, and I'm really good at talking forever.
But it's I need your talking. Your talking is good. I want less of me talking in general.
And more of me talking. I have to win everything.
Not me. It's mostly what I'm going for.
Autumn wants to be the best talker.
I have to be the best
by writing
at everything.
Oh, you're looking at the notes now too, aren't you, Auden? Oh, I don't have to read them.
Yeah.
I'm reading them for you as if you can't see them. Yeah, so Muggleborn, well, also people watching don't necessarily have my notes. So, so when I was reading this, I was also thinking about Hermione as like Muggleborn and how that affects her, and maybe how that affects her like trying to follow rules really strictly, and like what she might have thought about Harry and Ron before the troll incident, and why they weren't friends. And one of the things I was thinking about is like she's coming into this probably at least somewhat aware of the disprivilege she might have. If she really has read like everything imaginable, she's probably already found out that being a Muggle-born student is not a good thing, and that people might not. That she needs to work harder to get respect. And so here is pureblood Ron Weasley and famous Harry Potter. And sure enough, pureblood Ron Weasley, famous Harry Potter's best friend, says some like mean thing to her. Of course she's upset about it, and she probably just thinks they're like mean and bullies like Malfoy.
One thing I was noticing is like something that I had attributed to sexism. I wonder if that is actually related to like her race as a Muggle-born instead. I kind of think it's probably a mixture, but like J.K. Rowling said, Hermione was now refusing to speak to Harry and Ron, but she was such a bossy know-it-all that they saw this as an added bonus. And it was just another example of an intelligent, assertive female like being cast in a negative light to me. And,
yeah.
I did. That's later. Whoops.
I do often read Hermione as being on the autism spectrum, and so I think partly she does just come off as like not having great social skills. So she interacts with people by like rules, and especially at 11. And so she's just like, well, you have to follow the rules, and that's not how 11-year-olds like to be. And so somebody who's like, follow the rules, they're like, oh, why? What's wrong with you? Why would you follow rules?
Why would you raise your hand in class? You teacher's pet. Why do you answer all the questions?
So I think Ron and Harry, there may be some sexism and some racism involved, and I think there's also some involvement of just like Hermione's personality is not one that they're like they don't understand at this point, because they're not really upset about any of the other girls in their class. They have no problem with, and I'm sure there are other like smart girls in their class who they're not like
loathing.
Yeah. I mean, the other girls in their class aren't described very much, but I don't think that they're I don't think it matters to Harry and Ron if their female classmates are smart. Like they don't, at least Harry and Ron. I think Malfoy might be bothered by it, but I think they just don't like that Hermione tells them not to break rules, and they want to break rules. I think that's the bigger part of it.
I think Hermione's thing about rules is really interesting now that I'm thinking more about it, especially in the context of Hermione being on the autism spectrum, but not like specifically that, but also like Hermione is in a brand new environment that she doesn't really have any reference point for, and she's 11 years old, and like there are all of these people who know this environment already and are super prepared for that, and she is just kind of thrown in here without really any support from the administration really at all. And I think like the idea that Hermione is subsequently like, well, I'm in this brand new environment. I don't really know what the unspoken rules of this environment are. I don't know what the social structure rules are. But I know what the academic rules are. I know how to do school. And so I'm going to do that, like, really hard. That's something that I personally relate to as I am preparing to go to college. And I'm, like, reading every document that I can find and, like, doing all this research. I'm going to go to school and be Hermione and be like, I've read everything and I don't know how to interact with you in this new environment because, like, I don't know the rules here, but I know some of them and I'm going to follow them very carefully because that's all that I know how to do here because, like, you haven't told me what the other rules are yet.
I strongly identify that with that because that was totally me, like in college and then again in grad, like really just every time I've been in school, that's been me. And I just was noticing as we were talking that it's Hermione's coping mechanism. Yeah. Like it's the only way she knows how to deal, so that's what she does, like you were saying.
yeah, which is part of the reason why I like read her as autistic. I'm autistic myself.
Hmm.
I know finding rules and structure is my way of dealing with like things that are overwhelming. It's not really my way anymore because now I'm just like if I create rules and then they aren't followed, I get more stressed out than if I just like go, there are no rules. It's a very weird thing, but yeah, like I also think of like if Hermione's like on the autism spectrum and you have like this 11-year-old muggle-born autistic kid coming into like that sounds like where is the disability services at Hogwarts? Where is their support system?
Where's their school counselor?
Yeah, you just go to Madame Pomfrey and she fell and heals your head.
That's yeah, the only thing that is making me like not totally panic about preparing for college at this point in, February is like very carefully reading everything that the Office of Disability Services at my new school has put out and being like, these things exist. I don't need them yet, but they are there. And like Hermione, oh no, she didn't have those at all, and I hadn't really thought. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of students who need that, especially Harry and Neville probably have some
Yeah.
psychological disorders, for sure. Both from the people who raised them not always being very nice to them, and also just their family tragedy to deal with, their parents.
Yeah.
There's a lot they have to deal with. Ron has some problems going on. I mean, like all the students got some.
Draco Malfoy from growing up with Lucius.
Yeah, he's got some issues. Yeah. Anyway,
Speaking
Hogwarts
of
is
issues,
terrible.
speaking of issues, that leads us right into the next question, I guess. Do you wanna
sure.
read it?
Yeah. So my background is like my master's degree is in school counseling. I'm repeating this because Auden didn't hear it earlier, I don't think. And I have psychological stuff going on myself, a few different mental health issues. And so I noticed I started counting, and by the beginning of chapter 10, the word mad has been used 11 times, like in a derogatory manner. And Trent and I were talking about this, and I think like what they were saying is that part of that is just a language thing, like British English versus American language. But I'm wondering, what does this mean for those with mental health issues who read the books? That was like my first question.
And to clarify, by it being a language thing, I was saying that it's similar to crazy
Right.
in American English, which is so pervasive that it like almost doesn't have a meaning. Like it does have a meaning, but sometimes it's said to describe so many different things that aren't even like a bad thing. They're just like,
Mhm.
wow, I can't believe that thing. That's crazy, which is not a thing I would say other than explaining the thing, because I'm no longer saying that word if I can help it. So that was my one point there, just to clarify on language. It is still a mental health thing to talk about, I guess. Yeah.
So for me, like, it made me mad. So that's how, like, that's what it meant
in
for
an
me.
American way.
Yeah, mad, like angry. It made me angry, and it made me feel like excluded. Like, oh, this is this thing that is getting poked fun at a lot in the book, but like that's my life. That's what my life is like, and they're saying this is a negative thing. And I wondered, like, should J.K. Rowling have chosen more inclusive language or excluded the use of that particular word or phrases like it, like she later uses, like office rocker or like bloody mental, and that type of thing.
I think the one thing I would say is that I think I don't remember every instance, but I think a lot of the instances are in dialogue, and people say that was it's this weird thing of like whenever you're writing things, dialogue of like whether you write the words that people say that are bad or censor them, and there's like a balance between being honest about like the way people actually talk and not saying offensive things in the way you write. Because obviously she isn't throwing all the curse words that clearly they're using by the time they're like, by the fourth book, I'm sure they're swearing.
Even when they're 11.
Even when they're 11, I'm sure they're swearing, but not as bad as by the fourth book. I'm sure fifth book Harry is nothing but swear words. It would have been twice as long though if you had included every swear word of Harry's. So yeah, I don't know about the narrative, but the dialogue, I feel like leaving it in is a way of like, now we're having a conversation about it. Like if it wasn't there, we wouldn't have a conversation about language. No, that's a good thing, but
I mean, I feel like that is often true of language like that, but that is only true when it actually inspires discussion and conversation.
Yeah.
And like I don't think that is really the case here.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't something where people are like, oh, wow, look at this. Like, there are a lot of things that people talk about in Harry Potter, a lot of things that Harry Potter inspired conversation about based on its inclusion that wasn't necessarily, like, necessary to include. But I don't think that, like, that particular language habit was one of them. So...
Yeah, and I'm not saying it was right.
Yeah.
Like I think, like as a writer, how would you deal with it? I think one of the ways might be having a character at some point out that the language is not necessarily okay. But that's such a huge conversation to have. Talking about ableist language, talking about ableism is still like way farther back behind everything else. Like. We can talk about racism to an extent, and even that's hard. So having a conversation about ableism, which is like, yeah, I don't know.
I like what they said about censorship because I hadn't thought of it in terms of like trying to realistically portray conversations between 11-year-old boys in Britain at the time. So that's an interesting new perspective for me to look at it from, for sure. My big question surrounding this topic is like knowing that Rowling herself suffered from depression and that's where she got like the idea of the Dementors from and everything. What does her inclusion of this phrasing, like this word in a negative way, mean about mental health stigma? If like this is like she has experienced mental health issues and it's something she's poking fun at in her book.
It's pervasive. I think that's what it says. I think many people who have mental health issues still use ableist language, and specifically ableist language that targets like mental health as a stigma. Yeah, I don't know many people who don't use words like crazy or mad.
And I'm definitely guilty of doing that myself. It's just, for me...
Yeah, there's a difference between things that you say as a person in conversation and things that are written in a text that's sold all the way around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
well, she also wasn't probably expecting to be sold all the way around the world.
But I mean, once a certain number of the books had been published and sold, then the dynamic of that changes. But even when you're releasing any kind of content, like any kind of media content, I know, at least for me, the way that I speak to my friends and the way that I post even on like my blog it's not, dramatically different because I'm still maintaining my voice and the voices of my characters or whatever, but there's more awareness because I know that what I'm saying is being read and interpreted by people who don't necessarily know me as well as my friends might, and don't see the context that I'm writing that in, or like the dynamics of those relationships. Those have shifted, and so like that's something that I have been thinking about a lot.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's a bit sad to me that she does this, because, like Trem was saying, mental health stigma is so pervasive, and even though she's sort of out about her experience, and she's like written characters like the Dementors, like we were talking about earlier, to sort of address her experience of depression, it's still something that she, like, I think she can't feel real confident about it or good about it. Like, I feel like she maybe feels ashamed still, otherwise she wouldn't do this.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't know. I think it's also a way to like disconnect from like saying having experienced like depression and stuff like that. It's like it's a way to she could have experienced depression and not think that that means mad. Like
yeah.
mad for her might be like need to be contained in a facility permanently, long term, like, and she may separate herself from that by saying, well, it was just depression.
That's what I was just about to say.
Yeah.
Slightly differently, that a lot of people don't really associate things like depression or anxiety or like other things like that as being in the same sort of classification set as other mental illnesses. And I think that reflects something that is also problematic and connected. But I think maybe that is also part of what is at play. Like, JKR identifying herself as someone who has experienced depression and like identifying herself as, I don't know, like in the same sort of circle as like someone to whom the words mad or insane or crazy would be applied to, like those are very different things. So I mean, I think to some degree it could be like internalized ableism, but on the other hand it might just be like just ableist language, like not reflecting something that she sees about herself, but more reflecting, I mean, still reflecting something that she sees about herself, but reflecting the way that she doesn't associate herself with those types. So
Yeah. Othering.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the interest of time, I want to move on to the next question. Yeah, because we have like, we might go over by a few minutes, but I don't want to go over too late, just for people.
We already talked about the next thing.
Oh, yeah, we did kind of talk about that. Okay, good. So that means we have 2 more on this chapter, and there's not much on the next chapter. Do you want to lead on this? Because it's yours.
Sure. On page 172, Ron calls Hermione a nightmare and says that no one can stand her, and he does this within her earshot. And this isn't the last time that we'll hear Ron say something hurtful about someone else, but it seems to me sort of like people usually give him a pass. When bullying and the Harry Potter series are discussed, I hear a lot of conversations about Snape and Malfoy. I don't hear a lot of conversations about the way that Ron treats, like, definitely Hermione and potentially other people as well. And I'm wondering, like, what's really... and I realized something else, too. I'm going to ask this question. Why does Ron really call Hermione a nightmare and say no one can stand her? Like, she's just bested him again at schoolwork, so is it really jealousy or embarrassment, or, like, does he actually legitimately think that about her? And 2, if it were one of those characters who was not as well liked as Ron, would I even be asking that question?
Yeah. I've been thinking about Ron in this chapter a lot, especially because so after he's awful to her, and Harry's like, "Oh, I think she heard you. I think she's crying," and then like later on they find out she's crying again. Like Ron's described as like uncomfortable and awkward. Um, so I don't think he feels good about the exchange. And I was thinking like about that and about him being described as uncomfortable and awkward. I was thinking about how like boys are socialized and how like whether that's coming into play in this, like whether Ron might want to say sorry but doesn't feel like it would be manly to say sorry, and part of that might just be his like I'm tough. I don't well, she's upset, so well, whatever. She can get over it. Like, girls have feelings too much. They need to stop, or whatever's going on there. Because I don't think, like later on in the chapter, I don't think Ron understands how upset she is. I don't think he understands because even when she's in the bathroom and Harry's like, "Let's go get her," Ron's like, "Oh, I mean, but." I don't want my brother to scratch me. And then he still seems not to be caring, but the moment like she screams, Ron's immediately like, oh my gosh, we have to go help her. Like there's no bit of Ron that actually hates her. He's just not very nice. And probably not aware of how his words are affecting her. And probably hasn't been taught that enough, maybe? I don't know. That went off on a very far tangent. Sorry.
And I wonder also, like, if another male student had been the one to correct Ron, would he have reacted the same way? And then, like, what would have happened if that male student had cried?
Yeah.
Like, I just in general wonder how gender roles are playing into this.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I am kind of going off of that because
That's okay.
I think something that is really interesting for me in that conversation is like the way that we as an audience are expected to respond to the actions of a protagonist versus someone who has already been characterized as an antagonist, and the way that that kind of plays into the way that we see the behaviors of people in our lives as well. Like the way that we are expected to forgive Ron right away and look for alternate motives and reasons, but when other characters do similar things, it's like, well, they're just bad. You know, they did that because, you know, they're bad. That's how we're supposed to see them. And I think that's true in a lot of pieces of media, and also true in the way that we interact with people on a daily basis, both on a societal scale and also on an interpersonal level. Because, like, people who we have already decided we do not like and do not get along with, when they do good things, we're more likely to characterize those things as, like, out of the norm. And
Motivated by something else. They have some other.
Yeah. But I think this is especially interesting for me in the context of media like Doctor Who, where the protagonist has done so many really weird, awful things.
Really horrible things.
Yeah, in the same way that many of the antagonists of the story have. But by virtue of the story being told with a sympathetic light toward that character, we forgive them immediately and often don't even see their actions as bad. And I think like that sheds a very interesting light on the way that our media is used as a tool for like pushing specific perspectives. Yeah, but also like looking at Harry and the other protagonist characters in Harry Potter. Like, Harry has done a lot of pretty gross things too, but he's Harry Potter and the series is Harry Potter, and so, you know, he's Harry Potter. What? So I think that's kind of
go on this tangent, but you made me think of a tangent about Dumbledore and the way people defend Dumbledore, who has done some really not good things.
Yeah.
Because he's a protagonist. But I don't want to go off in that direction because we really don't have time. And there will be plenty of opportunities to talk about Dumbledore.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
So then my last question that I had for this chapter was like, what's the deal with Hermione being a damsel in distress in this chapter? Like, we know we haven't seen yet that she's brave, but we know she's brave. She's smart, and two 11-year-old boys come and save her, and like, there's specifically a quote that says Hermione Granger was shrinking against the wall opposite, looking as if she was about to faint. And then they talk about how she had sunk to the floor in fright. And then Ron like comes in and doesn't know what he's gonna do and says the spell and like sort of saves the day.
I actually like the book version better than the movie version, where Hermione has to tell Ron how to do the spell. I was actually thinking about that was another instance of Ron doing something good, and it went to Hermione in the movies, because
That's true.
I think one of the things I liked about this scene is that, like, this is turning around the beginning of the chapter, where in the beginning of the chapter, Hermione was trying to teach Ron how to do the thing, and Ron was like, fine, well, whatever, if you know everything. And then Ron comes in, and Hermione actually needs help at this time, and, like, Ron's like, oh, I remember what you taught me.
Right, but if she hadn't taught him, like...
Yeah, if she hadn't taught him, he wouldn't... So it's not that he gets the credit for it, but he was paying attention. He just was a jerk about it. But I think, like, I don't think she's a damsel in distress. I think she's an 11-year-old girl who is cornered by a mountain troll and wasn't expecting it. And Harry and Ron already knew it was there. They already saw it. They knew what they were expecting. Hermione's, like, caught off guard by some giant mountain troll. She knows nothing. Ron knows about mountain trolls. Hermione doesn't. She's probably read about them in books, maybe. But, like,
yeah.
She's only been at the school for a couple months, and she is having a bad day already. She's been crying in the bathroom. I don't think she was in a good place to...
I mean, like, I think that is obviously true, but that is specifically true if you're looking at that set of events as, like, a real-life set of events that was not written by an author on purpose with awareness of what the dynamics of that scene, like, how those would play out. And I think that's something that happens a lot when we look at media. I specifically remember another example of this when people were upset about, like, a certain female character fainting and then the male character carrying her out, and people were like, that is kind of problematic. And other people were like, well, did you want him to just leave her there in the burning building? Because that would be bad. And it's like, I mean, but the author decided to have that building on fire and to have the female character pass out and, like, to have the only way for the solution, like, have the only solution be for the male character to carry her out. Those were all choices that were made that wouldn't be relevant in, like, a real life situation. And I think that is kind of like it represents a interesting shift in the power balance between the characters, definitely. Like, Ron using the tools that Hermione has taught him unwillingly, that he has learned unwillingly from Hermione to help save her. Like, that is something that is echoed through the series, the way that they kind of play off of each other's strengths. But also, like, the portrayal of Hermione as, like, a weak preteen girl in the corner of the bathroom crying during Halloween dinner and getting attacked by a troll is, like, not amazing either.
I think in the context of the series, though, I don't think Hermione's portrayed as a damsel in distress very often. I think this is a specific scene, and this scene was made because they needed to be friends somehow. And why would they be friends? I mean, I don't think they would have been friends unless Harry and Ron had done something that dramatic to help Hermione. And they wouldn't have done something that dramatic to help Hermione unless Hermione really needed help. Because I think Hermione already had this, like, negative attitude towards them. Like, not negative, like, I don't like them, but, like, expectation that they might not be super nice. And they also did not have much interest in rule abiding. they were just very unlikely to become friends without something like this. And so I think it
Yeah.
was more a plot device and I don't know how else you would have written that for them to become friends, because I think this is the moment when Hermione goes, "Oh, these guys aren't so bad. They're kind of obnoxious in class, but
Well,
they."
like Harry or Ron could have been the one in distress, and Hermione could have gone and saved them.
Everyone could have been in distress, and they could have saved each other.
But why would everyone be in distress? You need the mountain troll for the stuff with Quirrell later. Like there's.
I mean, but like you could, I firmly believe in J.K. Rowling's capability of working out a situation in which all three of them could have been in distress
and work together.
And work together. And so that it wasn't like I think that idea of Hermione being like, yeah, these guys are actually okay, and they're they're a little bit annoying because they're, young boys doing their thing, but they're genuinely good people. I think that could have played out in a way that didn't simultaneously like lower Hermione's, like the perception of Hermione's strength in the
like take away her
story.
agency.
Yeah.
I think though that like female characters should be able to be in distress without becoming damsel in distress though too. Like I think like a character, like if Ron was in distress, he's not damsel in distress. Like I think if you want to take it far enough, we need to have like female characters in every single different kind of role in a story, not just strong female characters who get everything right all the time and are always.
Yeah, I mean that's why I don't think that the dynamic should be like Hermione rescuing the two boys.
Yeah.
But like Hermione is still in distress. Hermione is still in a position of needing help. But it isn't that she specifically is separated out and sort of like punished for an emotional response. Like I think that also like the idea, I think it is important to have female characters who are flawed and experience situations in which they require help, but like that is something that happens fairly often, and so
yeah,
when we're trying to like level the playing board a little bit more, it's not necessarily that we need more of those situations.
Yeah.
In a like
Yeah, I mean, I just feel from the series that there's a lot more like Ron in distress than Hermione.
Good.
I'm like, and Harry in distress, and Hermione, especially in the movies. The movies are like Hermione is never in distress in the movies. Hermione is always perfect and has everything together, and yeah, she's a horrible character in the movies. So I like that she is freaking out in the books and just is actually freaking out. That feels much more authentic. I can relate to that more than I would have been Hermione. Let's be real.
Yeah. Also me, except I would have actually passed out.
And I like if I saw a mountain troll, I probably would too. But I feel it like that's like something. One of us actually experiencing that is very different from an author. Like creating all of the events in a certain way so that it happens this way, and like while yes, Hermione is shown as this like strong, independent woman, and the Ron and Harry are sometimes seen as in distress. Like this is the moment that they become friends. Couldn't they have at least started on equal footing?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think there is some sense of it because, like after the physical danger, then they're in the like, oh no, we're gonna get a lot of trouble, and then it's Hermione's. It's like a different kind of distress and danger, and it's not the same.
But Hermione is still sacrificing.
Mm-hmm.
Hermione is still the one making that sacrifice there. She's still the one sacrificing her standing
her values.
Worked so hard to get to.
Yeah.
Like, especially when we take that in the context of what we've talked about earlier, and like the way that Hermione's
the way girls are treated in school in general.
Yeah, but also like the way that Hermione has had to fight so hard to get to this point where she has
Yeah.
that respect from her peers and her teachers in terms of her academic capability. Like she doesn't have that respect really, but like
Yeah.
that is acknowledged about her, and also like um, looking at the way that she's using rules as a coping mechanism and a way to kind of guide her understanding of her world in a very strange and dangerous place. Like that is a big thing for her to give up to go to McGonagall and be like, "Yep, it was me actually."
But I think her saying
And
that why they became friends. Like, had
but
she not done
Yeah,
had she been honest, she would have had to been like, I was in the bathroom crying because that guy was a jerk.
yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of like,
But she could have even just said, "Hey, I went to the bathroom like during the feast. I didn't hear."
yeah,
And Ron and Harry were like messing with me, and she could have easily just thrown them under the bus for that.
but there were also other situations that could have, like, it could have gone a different way where she still got them out of trouble but didn't have to sort of sacrifice that element of her standing with her professors and, like,
Yeah.
that she had worked so hard to get to.
Yeah. I also wonder if McGonagall believes the story. Because, like, say Harry and Ron are described as, like, trying not to act like they've
Yeah,
surprised the story. Like,
I don't think they're very good at hiding.
and McGonagall's just like 5 points from you, 5 points for each of you, and whatever.
And isn't Snape
I
there? We
think
know
he's-
that he can
I think
literally
he's
read
just, like,
minds.
I think McGonagall's just like, oh my gosh, we could have killed these 3 kids. They're still alive. Like, she's like, I can't.
Whatever, we'll just move on.
He's I can't kill my seeker. We need to make Slytherin.
Amazing.
Priorities: winning Quidditch. No,
Speaking of Quidditch,
yeah. Either we need to talk this really quickly, or we need to table this for later because we're already over
We're
time.
out of time. See,
We're over.
I don't have a watch.
I mean, we can. If you
I was
guys
like pointing at my
for,
watch, but
like,
I don't have a watch.
10 minutes, we can go like 10 minutes. I think 15 minutes over is okay. But then after that, we need to end the broadcast.
okay.
We can talk on our own after like this thing, but I don't want a 2-hour video. It's hard for people to catch up on everything.
That makes sense.
I think I have to head out anyways, so.
Okay, then maybe we should end here.
Yeah, we could table it.
Yeah, table. There's lots of Quidditch throughout the series, and there's just 2 questions basically about 2 groups of questions about Quidditch.
And
Yeah.
they're both related just to Quidditch rather than the actual what happens in the chapter, really. So
Yeah, mostly because like, the chapter, there's not a whole lot happening in the chapter. It's big.
Okay, cool.
So yeah. Goodbye, interwebs. We're gonna say goodbye to you now.